this topic is about creating original content for the moment. The three brands that you're going to be hearing from have been living in the moment and seizing the moment. And I'm incredibly proud to bring them to the stage. So Fritz, if you wouldn't mind coming on board. There we go. And I'd like to introduce Fritz Krug, who's the digital content specialist at Bell's Brewery. He's got a phenomenal story to walk you through. So I know we're kind of tight on time, so I won't do much more setup here other than to hand it over to Fritz for his presentation, and then I'll come back to introduce our next two panelists as well.
Great. Thanks, Scott, and everyone at the PhotoShelter team. It's so great to be here, and I was geeking out so much on all of the baseball stuff. Big baseball fan, and beer and baseball, and especially Oberon, go so well together. So today I'm going to talk about 3 Oberon days, 3 of our kind of biggest days of the year at Bell's Brewery in terms of sale and content and social media, and how over the last 3 years, it's radically changed each year from 2019, 2020, and just this past Monday, which was Oberon Day. So for folks who might not know, at Bell's, we're the 7th largest craft brewery in the United States, independently owned. We're celebrating our 35th anniversary this year. So we've been brewing beer for a while, and something that we've always done is we've always brewed beer for the season to enjoy it in. We have a lot of year-round beers, but a lot of the beers that we brew are brewed specifically for a certain season or a certain time of the year. And Oberon is our largest release in that sphere, one of our largest releases for the summer. And it's also one of our biggest content drivers on social media and out in the market. So Oberon Day is it's a celebration. It's usually the week before opening day of baseball. It's kind of a beer that we always love to drink at baseball games. Baseball is a big part of our company culture. But really, it's a celebration of the end of winter, the beginning of summer, getting out of the house after kind of our hibernation that we're in over the winter time, and spending time again with people. It's a day where our fans, beer lovers, employees, everyone kind of takes a day off. It's on a Monday. They get dressed up. And it's just kind of a great celebration here in Michigan and across the Midwest. And for me as a photographer, it's one of my favorite days because I get to be out, go to different bars, go to different restaurants, go to our Center Cafe, which you see in the upper left-hand corner there, and take pictures of excited people drinking beer. And you know, they get dressed up for it. And I have a couple beers myself. It's a great time. It's one of my favorite days every single year. And this was 2019, but 2020, things changed, as we all know. Bars and restaurants shut down here in Michigan about a week before Oberon Day, around that period of time. So as you can tell in the upper left-hand corner, one of my favorite bars downtown Kalamazoo. These photos were taken about 3 days before would have been Oberon Day. So you still see the St. Patrick's Day decorations are up. The parking lot of the Eccentric Cafe down there in the lower left-hand corner is empty and closed, and everything is vacant. So we still were shipping Oberon, we still brewed Oberon, we still were releasing Oberon. So we thought, how do we meet this moment and create as best we can, given the realities of the world, a sense of togetherness, kind of that sense of walking into a bar and enjoying an Oberon with friends. So we did a live stream with our founder, the brewery's founder, Larry Bell. He was quarantining in Chicago as we all were quarantining where we were. And we did a live stream, a toast and cheers from Larry. And we set it up very quickly, and we had a great response of people following. And, he spoke for about 10 minutes about everything that's going on in the world and kind of, what Oberon means to us, what it means for everyone else, and kind of the outpouring and support. And it was just a really nice moment to kind of take a break, have a beer, and kind of connect with other people. But I'll tell you all this, if you ever do a scheduled live stream on Facebook, you can schedule it, but you can't just have a phone and use the Facebook app to stream. You have to use a third-party service. So I spent a lot of time learning about streaming keys and passwords, and I was on the phone with Larry the weekend beforehand, getting him set up on Vimeo. So just keep that in mind if you ever do that. But instead of taking photos out at bars and restaurants, we had to be creative. Our city hall, which is just down the street from me here in Kalamazoo, has these wonderful lights that are set up that change for different holidays. And in 2020, they changed it to the colors of Oberon. So I went down with a can of beer and took a picture of it, and really trying to create a sense of normalcy when we can with different things. So the photos looked very different, but still kind of conveying that sense of that this is really a community holiday. This is a community celebration. So throughout 2020, a lot of the things that I loved to do, a lot of the kind of key moments that we would photograph and share had drastically changed. Kind of going back to baseball, one of my second favorite thing, second to Oberon Day, is going to opening day at the Detroit Tigers, getting a 16-ounce can of Oberon and getting it framed perfectly and getting that nice, just beautiful shot of beer and baseball is back. But the season was delayed and there was no fans allowed at the early part of the season. So I was at home and had my array of TV set up and poured an Oberon and snapped a picture, kind of recreating that thing that we love in just a very 2020 way. In the lower left-hand corner, you see one of our mini kegs that we do, a 5-liter mini keg, and normally take a picture of that out on vacation with friends and family, on a beach, on a river, on a lake, wherever. But that didn't really happen that much last year. So I took a picture of it in my fridge. And it looked like I was eating very healthy at that point during the quarantine. So good for me for that. I should keep it up in 2021. And in the right-hand side, you see a picture of the Oberon sun. And we published this kind of right when mask wearing was being promoted. And it was like, yes, we all should wear masks. Let's wear a mask. And it was something where we took one of our most iconic images and adapted it. The joke there, Oberon filtered. Oberon is unfiltered wheat ale. So putting the mask on and saying that it's now filtered, even though the beer is the same, was a way to kind of help raise awareness about wearing a mask in a way that we could on our platform, and also have a little bit of fun with it. So that was 2020, but now we're heading into 2021, and what do we do? I think it's easy to, when you're in the moment of, a year like last year, to kind of live each day at a time, and you really had to in a lot of ways. But now that we're heading into 2021 for, something like Oberon Day, what do we do when we have this time to plan and, think things out? The first thing we did was fill our content buckets. I think everyone here knows how important photos and videos became in 2020. And we anticipated an increased desire from our sales and distributor partners for different images and posters and templates and stuff like that. So we filled those content buckets early, and we have a great team here who helps out with that. And for me as a photographer and videographer, it really allowed me to cut back, as some of the earlier speakers talked about, on cutting down on those emails and text messages. Hey, do you have a picture of that? Do you have a picture of that? And really allowed me to focus on what kind of content am I going to create for Oberon Day 2021. Now, what's different in this year than last year was that some bars and restaurants are open at limited capacity. People are a little bit more comfortable having backyard barbecues and backyard events and stuff like that. So what are we going to do? Maybe a 6 o'clock kind of prime time live stream might not work as much. So we created this event that aired at noon on Monday, this past Monday, called Wake Up with Oberon. It was a fun hour-long, Good Morning America morning show type thing. We had our local weatherman give an Oberon 3-day forecast. We worked with, on the right, our local baseball team and their mascot Porter to do a beer review of Oberon. And then we ended it, as you see in the lower left-hand corner there, with a live toast from Larry Bell. And I think this was a great way to approach it, where we had more time to think about it and focus on and kind of allow something different and a way for our fans to connect with us that they might not necessarily be able to or feel comfortable with. As you see in that photo in the bottom there, folks are there, they're spatial, they're socially distant, spread out, but it really allowed us to connect with people who were at home or at work, who were taking that lunch break. And something that I learned from this was it was really important to create this content in the moment. So a lot of the pre-recorded segments we did, we recorded them the Tuesday before Oberon Day, so 6 days beforehand. And we had been working on it for a month, but I really wanted to record as close to the date as possible because things constantly changed, and they still changed. I had to make last minute edits shortly before we went on air. So as with everything, it's all about adapting. And as you can tell from the photo on the right, that is not what a normal Oberon day would look like. Just imagine all that green space filled with people, but we adapted and we socially distant. Amy and Shelly up there in the upper left-hand corner, they were our host and they did a lot of adapting live. And in the lower left-hand corner, there I am in probably the most cramped live stream setup, most rustic live stream setup that I've ever done. But we made it work because this was the one spot where we could make things work. They had Ethernet and we were outside. And one thing that I really learned on this was I feel like it has been really easy in the last year to say, hey, you know, there's a global pandemic going on. There's so much stuff going on right now. Let's just get it done and move on. Let's get it done and move on. Let's go with the flow. And I think that's very important. But one thing that I caught myself doing is, well, what are the key quality things that we need to focus on? What are the things that we need to really pay attention to and not, just say, okay, let's move on. And for me, that was audio equipment. We had a late addition of a third participant. So it was the Saturday before the event, driving, an hour and a half to another town to buy another mic setup because we couldn't just pass off the mic from one person to another. And really realizing that if we don't have good audio, we can't settle on this. Another thing I learned throughout the last year, that goes into the workflow and goes with the moment is not being afraid of showing the realities of the situation. I think, it's easy to, as a marketer and someone who always wants to put our product in the best light, sometimes some things like I remember early on a year ago, even before the first COVID cases were in the United States, sometimes masks are worn when brewing, and I was hesitant about that, even though because it wasn't related to COVID, but I don't want people to think, oh, there's COVID here, or or whatever we were thinking in early 2020. But now wearing masks is so important, and I embrace capturing those moments as we all do in what we do. So some takeaways before I pass it off. Don't lose sight of your personality or what your brand's all about or what you're trying to do. I think it's easy to do that, but it's important to always keep focused on what are we doing here? What is this all about? And how can we keep that core essence going? With everything that changes all the time, know what's important and focus on those things. And go with the flow on other things, but don't let other important things go. Be honest and show what's going on. That builds trust with your audience. Fill up those content buckets early, get that done as soon as possible so you can focus on innovating and adapting and making content for the moment. And one thing I didn't mention about the live stream, but this came in very handy the other day, when doing something like a live stream or really anything, have a plan, have a backup plan, and then have a backup plan of that backup plan, because things can go haywire, things can go crazy. So I always like to think of it the way that I want to stream the live video, the way if something goes wrong, I'm going to live stream the video. Then it's the get out the cell phone, we're streaming to Facebook Live directly on the phone. So that's it. It was great chatting with you all, and I'll pass it back to you.
Great, that was fantastic, Fritz. And I love, well, first of all, the products you make have brought a lot of joy to my life, and I know a lot of others probably on the call as well. But just the ingenuity, the creativity, the passion to push on through was just beautifully documented, and some terrific takeaways for all of us. Now I'm going to bring up John Kelly, the Senior Manager of Photography at Fresh Direct, who has an incredible presentation to walk you through about how a brand works its way through a hopefully once-in-a-lifetime crisis and finds meaning and value in its product and what it means for both its consumers, but also to its organization. John has been we've been big fans of John's for many years in the Fresh Direct brand, and we've done some great work together in the past. His presentation, I think, takes it to an entirely new level. So I'll turn it over to John now, and let's fall in love with the photos, but more importantly, the story.
Sure. Thank you, Scott. Everything going well? Sounds good. Okay.
Looks great.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I want to take you through a little bit about the transformation that myself and my organization have gone through over the past year. As I'm sure everyone can relate, things have changed significantly for everyone, so this is our story. Okay, so while the pandemic has affected almost every aspect of our experience, I think more than the functional aspects of my workflow, it's had a very significant impact on the content and the subject matter that I cover here for the company. The broader impact of the pandemic has really transformed our company and the importance of our company to our surrounding community, as well as our sense of identity and our sense of purpose. So below are a few of the points, kind of the timeline that I'm going to take you through from the past year. So for those of you who may not necessarily be familiar with us, FreshDirect is the leading online-only grocery service. We deliver to customers in about 7 states in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, and we include the metropolitan areas of New York City, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. in our delivery area. Now, before the pandemic started, a lot of our external messaging, particularly through social media, was largely focused on food-centric content, kind of just trying to make everything that we sell very appetizing and inviting. And this included a lot of kind of whimsical, fun food imagery, as well as more aspirational, kind of elevated images of meals and large entertaining tablescapes and spreads, which obviously would have been much more appropriate before the pandemic. Additionally, we would highlight new and interesting products and sales promotions. So, fairly standard repertoire of content for our industry, I would say. So after the initial lockdowns happened, pretty much everything changed for us. Demand for our service pretty much exploded overnight. There were a lot of fears in the public surrounding places like grocery stores becoming vectors for transmission, and everyone was confined to their homes. So at that point, it was a natural fit. People needed our service more than they ever had. As a result, organic search for our service, as well as site visits and signups for accounts, reached historic highs in our 15 to 20 year history. And searches for our service came from all over the country, even areas that were outside of our delivery zones, including the Midwest and the West Coast. Again, even though we only deliver to, like I said, about 7 states in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. So as a result of this intense demand, for a period of time, our delivery capacity was completely maxed out. We also dealt with a lot of the supply chain issues that affected many retailers across the country. And because of these issues, a lot of potential new and existing customers were really desperate to understand how soon they would be able to use our service, and when they were, what products would even be available to them. So for us, social media became one of the fastest, most direct ways for us to communicate this information to them, and really to answer some of these very urgent questions. And, because of the speed at which these needed to be delivered, a lot of these posts were very simple, just kind of text and graphic based. And for me, as the in-house visual artist, it's somewhat frustrating to say this, but these, like I said, very simple text-based posts became some of our most engaged with content that we've had in the past several years. And again, just more of a testament to the demand for information than anything. So gradually, as time started to wear on, we got a little bit back. We had a better time getting back into form. So we were able to open up a little bit more delivery capacity, and some of the supply chain issues that plagued us began to ease. And our customers also began to kind of settle into the reality of lockdown. As we as a company started to emerge from this initial survival period as well, we wanted to kind of get back into providing some of the content and imagery that our followers had come to know and love about us. So while things were still a little bit grim, particularly here in New York, we tried to lighten the mood as much as we could, as well as become part of the burgeoning trend of a return to home cooking and experimentation in the kitchen by rebooting our recipe content and starting to do so with more attainable, smaller serving comfort dishes. Additionally, we accompanied these with instructional videos that were recorded at the stylist/social media manager's apartment. And this kind of helped make the content a little bit more relatable and accessible. As the pandemic and world events kind of began to expose some very real socioeconomic disparities within our society, we started to direct more of our focus, both as a company and with our communications, to addressing some of these issues however we were able. Now, because we're a food company and because we own our own distribution, we were able to lead a partnership with the City of New York and the Borough presidents called the 5 Borough Food Drive. And as part of this program, we were able to assemble and deliver 300,000 boxes of food to New Yorkers in need throughout the pandemic. Additionally, we were able to redouble our fundraising and food donation efforts for the New York Common Pantry, a charity that we had begun to partner with prior to the pandemic, but because of the pandemic, the need became that much more urgent. New York Common Pantry is a charity that serves homeless communities in Manhattan as well as the Bronx. And our efforts here resulted in raising over $2.7 million in individual customer donations, which allowed New York Common Pantry to feed over 400,000 individuals. In order to promote these partnerships, our CEO became a much more public-facing representative of the organization, and he participated in several streaming interviews for national broadcast platforms like ABC and CNBC, which created new production challenges for our team to meet, but we were able to do so with great speed and I think with great success as well. Additionally, we were able to highlight and feature our partner brands and product producers of color and women-owned businesses. And as we shared images and posts of our donation events, of our volunteers and community partners, our customers really responded well to this content, and it resulted in some of the most engaged posts that we had throughout the year. Additionally, after the initial influx of interest in our organization at the very beginning of the pandemic, we really had to work hard to differentiate ourselves from a lot of the competing grocery delivery services that people had tried at that point. And we worked in a much more focused way than ever to define in very basic terms what our process is and to give a face to what is seemingly a very impersonal virtual service. So we started to compile a larger library of imagery of our facility and delivery trucks, as well as portraiture of our employees throughout the organization, particularly in manufacturing and operations, since they aren't typically very customer facing. And this type of imagery became much more of a fixture of our photography and videography workflow. These images and videos were used in packages that were assembled for external communications, including print, online, and in broadcast media. And additionally, featuring employees in posts about company-wide vaccination efforts and acknowledgement by the borough presidents of the Bronx and Queens of some of our employees of merit during the 5 Borough Food Drive, as well as featuring individual employees of note across the organization, became some of our most engaged with content of the year. Additionally, to acknowledge internally the incredible efforts of our staff throughout the past year, we elevated and expanded our awards of recognition, which resulted in us taking about 100 portraits or headshots of meritorious employees, which have since been displayed throughout the facility for their peers to acknowledge. So where has the past year left us? What have we learned from this experience? Well, it's helped us to realize that food really means so much more to people than just what they're eating. It can be a source of comfort when there can otherwise seem to be none. It connects people to places that where they can't be, or to people that they can't be with. And providing this service to people really connects them to us and connects us to them. And it also taught us that our customers are really grateful for helping to bring all of this to them safely, and that they appreciate the people who make that possible for them. And for that reason, we'll definitely continue to elevate and to share these stories with our customers moving forward. So I'd like to thank you. Thank you for listening today, and I hope you have enjoyed the rest of the conference.
Wow, John, that was just incredible, beautifully done, and an incredible journey that you just walked us through. We're going to make sure to shout out the organization that you've worked with and see how we can all support that important initiative. And just we can't thank you enough. Really beautiful work, and we can't. It's really powerful. Thank you. At this point, we're going to bring up our final presenter, Pauline Bethende, who is the Vice President of Global Exhibitions at Photographiska, which is a multi-location culture center for the visual arts. If you haven't been to one before, get it on your bucket list for when we get back to being able to travel and mingle again. They're absolutely spectacular. And Pauline will walk you through some of their history and exhibits, and also how they've been reacting to the pandemic and creating and inventing new ways for viewers to engage with visual media when they can't go see it live, although we're starting to get ready to go see things live too. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Pauline.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Fotografiska, we are a home for photography and, like I said, a museum experience for the modern world. We are a destination to discover world-class photography, eclectic programming, elevated dinner, and surprising new perspectives. And we opened in Stockholm, Sweden 11 years ago. And before COVID, we had around 500,000 visitors per year. And in 2019, we expanded to New York City and to Tallinn, Estonia. And in 2022, we are opening in Berlin, Germany. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we present photography in the physical space, and also some of the initiatives we made the past year during the pandemic. So like I said, our exhibitions, they present world-class photography and visual art in a combination of, established international renowned artists like David LaChapelle, for example, alongside emerging talents. And many of our exhibitions, they also, like you see, they go beyond photography and include also video art, sculptures, sounds, and even sculptures and installations. So our goal and our ambition is that when you walk through our spaces, you experience everything from pure beauty, pure inspiration, to conceptual and very thought-provoking art. And this makes us invite everyone and offer something for everyone, no matter what your background is, what your knowledge of art is. And that is important because we want everyone to feel inspired and to feel invited to Fotografiska. And the exhibitions that we do are developed in, sometimes with galleries, sometimes with estates and private collectors, but most of all, I would say 90%, all of our shows are developed in very close one-on-one dialogue with, our most, important collaborator, which is obviously the artists themselves. So I know that there are a lot of creative people on this call, not only photographers. So I would like to speak a little bit more about the way we present and enhance the art through graphic design. So we have a very close collaboration with our design agency, Banker Vessel, who actually designed our logo many years ago. And it's just a funny thing that the logo is actually designed with inspiration from a camera shutter. So you can see, the kind of the shutter. It's also a flash. It's a F for Fotografiska and M for museum, but definitely a close connection to the mechanics of the camera, so to say. I also have some examples of designs from our shows. Like I said, Fotografiska is not your traditional white cube gallery, and we often use color and typography to enhance the artworks. We also want to activate more senses. So as you walk through the space, again, sound is a very important thing. We even, smell sometimes actually, and also how people move in the space, how, getting people close up or far away from the artworks. Sometimes we are, including music that the artist listened to when they shot the images, or we create a soundscape that relates to what you are looking at. And the whole purpose is to enhance the experience of looking at photography. So these are a few examples from previous shows. For example, Martin Scholler, who works with a very specific kind of lighting in his portraits, we use the same kind of fluorescent lamps to create, the presentation of his name and title inside the show. Scarlett Tooth Garfland, we actually took salt to reference to the images from her, her trip to the Bolivian salt desert. Macy Cousins, again, taking colors from the actual photography and embracing them into the overall exhibition design. Nick Weesey, who works with X-ray photography, also, we kind of implemented a kind of X-ray feeling into his, what we call the title wall, with his name and the title. So when March 2020, when the pandemic hit, it hit us hard. So we closed 2 museums within 2 days. Fotografiska New York was closed for 5 months. Tallinn is currently still closed for a 3rd time. So, I mean, what do you do when you cannot bring people to a physical space, into a museum? You bring photography to the people. So the first thing we did, and this was made in 2-3 weeks notice, we collected 50 world famous and local photographers and did an outdoor show in the middle of Stockholm with everyone from Edward Bertinsky and Sarah Moon and Paolo Reversi to some of the local names here in Stockholm, Sweden. We did 3D tours, virtual tours of our museum that everyone could access online for free. We did virtual guided tours, live and recorded. So recorded ones to publish on Facebook and social media. We also had guided tours live where actually a curator could sit in Stockholm, Sweden, or even New York for that matter, and comment on a live tour happening at the same time in Estonia. We started doing podcasts instead of, having people coming to an artist talk. We basically put everything online so people could still take part of, the stories behind the artworks and behind our brand. We turned our magazine, which is normally distributed with one of the largest newspapers in Sweden, into a digital magazine for everyone to read. We started doing the online education, which we actually never did before. We always had face-to-face classes inside our buildings, but now we put everything online and it works out really, really, really well, better than we thought actually. And I should say that we actually have a restaurant. We always have a restaurant in all venues, but in Stockholm we were very creative and did a cook-along video show and also a pop-up bakery also in a few days basically. So, but what happens after the pandemic and where do we go from here? So, I mean, our belief is strongly that we have an urge for experience art in real life and with your friends and with your family, and people will always want to be part of a community and have live conversations. But I think that the creativity we were forced to have during the pandemic that pushed us into these new waters, that will definitely stay with us. So I think from March 2021 and onwards, we will have one foot, as always, in the physical space and in physical meetings between people and people and people and art. But we also look forward to coming back, being a premier destination for photography and culture, also on a digital platform.